I just pulled up to my home poker room, TCH Dallas in Dallas, Texas. I'm excited to get in there. I'm gonna play some 2-5 match the stack. We should be able to get a table pretty quick, so I'll see you guys in there. Let's get some fun hands for the vlog.
I'm ready to get started here at my home poker room, Texas Card House, Dallas, and I'm going to be playing the 2-5 match the stack, no limit hold'em. This is a brand new table, so the max buy-in right now will be $1,000. After the first 30 minutes, we can match the stack. The very first hand I look down at is Ace-4 of spades in the cutoff, and I raised to $20. Only the button calls, so we're going heads up to a flop of Ace-Deuce-3 with 2 hearts. Ace-high boards are much different than king-high boards. Yes, we will have some range advantage on ace-high boards, but if we think about our opponent's range, our opponents are going to flat a lot of suited ace and offsuit ace-x combinations from the button, small blind, and the big blind. So on ace-high boards, we don't want to downbet as often as we do on king-high static boards. On this particular flop, I like to check a lot of my weaker ace-x combinations or bet them for about 40 to 50% pot. So in this case, I do decide to continue betting. Since we have the 4, we do have some coverage for the straight, and there is a flush draw out there. I know this opponent is pretty sticky and he calls a wide range of hands, so I want to get value for my hand. I bet $20. He doesn't have anything to call us with. He lets it go, and we take down our first pot. So already at this table, I was noticing a lot of tendencies from my opponents, and it seemed like they were very loose passive, meaning they're gonna limp a lot of hands pre-flop and call pretty much any raise to see a flop, and then once they whiff, they're gonna fold. So this is very exploitative for us, especially looking down at Ace-4 of clubs on the button. Both the under the gun player and the hijack limp, I'm gonna raise and I'm gonna make it a bigger size because again, we're gonna get them to commit money pre-flop and then take it down post-flop. So I raised to $30. They both call as predicted, so we're going 3 ways to a flop of 10-10-7 with 2 clubs. They check it over to me, and this is going to be a board that's going to be hard for my opponents to continue on unless they have exactly a flush draw, a hand like 8-9 suited, or a 10 of course. Being in position, we can put max pressure on our opponents, and our exact hand has a lot of equity as we flop the nut flush draw. I don't need to bet too big here, but this isn't a board I'm going to be betting every single time, so in this case, I'm going to go about half pot, and I bet $45. Fortunately for us, our opponents don't have much to continue with, so we're going to take this pot down with ace high. So every 30 minutes on every dealer change, there's a $15 double board PLO bomb pot. Bomb pots are where we all put in a certain amount of money pre-flop, which in this case is $15. We are then dealt 2 community boards, and we are going to play pot limit Omaha in this one. I get really lucky on the bottom board, rivering the nut full house, so in this hand I profit about $150, chopping up a few players' money. In this hand, I look down at Ace-10 of spades under the gun 1 and I raise to $20. Early position calls and the big blind calls, so we're going 3 ways to a flop of 10-9-6 with 2 diamonds. The big blind checks it over to me, and while this board can get a little dicey, we definitely have value at the moment, so I'm gonna bet. And since this isn't a flop I'm going to bet my entire range on, even multi-way, we're gonna size up just a little bit here, and I bet $55. Only the player to my left calls, so we go heads up to a jack of hearts on the turn. Now we can start checking as we have a great bluff catching candidate. This jack will pair up my opponent sometimes, but our hand is still pretty strong at this point. So when I check, he checks as well. We head to a 3 of diamonds river, so the flush does come in. After our opponent checks the turn, sure, he can have some flushes, but I think our pair of 10s with our ace kicker is going to be good here a ton of the time. So let's go for some value. He's not going to raise us unless he has 2 pair or better. So I bet $75, and our opponent folds pretty quickly, and we pick up a decent pot. In this hand, middle position limps, and the hijack, who looks like a competent pro, raises over the limp to $20. Button calls, and then I look down at ace-queen offsuit in the small blind. There's a lot of dead money out there. The limper has probably a very weak hand. The hijack can be raising light over this limp to isolate and play a pot against him heads up, and the button would be raising most of his strong hands here, so I'm gonna put in a 3-bet. And being in the small blind, we want to make it a little bit bigger and charge the in-position players a bad price to call me in position, so I raise to $130. The limper folds, and the hijack raiser quickly tosses his cards into the muck. The button also folds, so it looks like we picked a great spot to 3-bet ace-queen off out of position. In this hand, we have another dealer change bomb pot where we all put in $15 pre-flop, and this pot got massive. It was a 4-way all-in, probably around a $3,000 pot, and I flopped the nut flush, and luckily on the top board, the board ran out clean, so the only hand that can possibly beat me is 4-7 of diamonds for a straight flush, because I blocked the higher straight flush having the 9 of diamonds in my hand. So once the board ran out pretty clean, I was pretty comfortable with my hand. The other two players mucked, but then the player who I chopped the bottom board with, he rivered quad kings, but we do chop up the two all-in players' money, and we profited around $800 in this hand. In this hand, I find myself in a little bit of a sticky and awkward spot where Under the Gun, who is a very good pro, raises to $20. The small blind calls, and I look down at pocket fives in the big blind. We are super happy to flat here, hope to flop a set, so let's go 3 ways to a flop of 4-3-3 with 2 spades. Just about as good of a flop we could hope for with pocket fives. Small blind checks, I check, and Under the Gun decides to bet $40 into 60. The small blind calls, and now it's on me. I decide to flat and see what develops on the turn. There are a lot of good turn cards for us, like a 6, a deuce, a spade, so I'm gonna call and evaluate the turn. The turn is a very interesting card. It's the 4 of clubs, so now the board is double paired and we still have a tiny overpair to this board. I think I can make a good case for leading in this spot. We may have the best hand some of the time, and we want to deny equity from a hand that's going to check back a ton of the time, like ace king, ace queen. Pretty much all of his ace-x combinations are now going to want to get to showdown, and his higher pocket pairs don't love this card because being in the big blind, we have way more 4x and 3x combinations than the Under the Gun player, whereas he should really only have 5-4 suited in this spot. I don't think he's the type of player who would raise 4-3 suited Under the Gun, so we definitely have the advantage. So I guess my bet here is serving 2 purposes. We're betting for denial against virtually all over cards, and we'll also be extracting value from those hands as well. So I bet $105 and my opponent calls. The river is the 9 of diamonds, which is pretty inconsequential unless my opponent has exactly a hand like king 9 suited or ace 9 suited, as well as obviously pocket 9s. So here's where I'm not quite sure in the hand. I decide to bet $230, and at the time I thought I was bluffing and trying to get an overpair to fold because my opponent knows I can easily have a 4 or 3 in this spot, but my hand is also serving as a value bet against an unbelieving ace. So in poker, it's never good to be contradicting versus a value bet and a bluff, and in this spot, I'm not sure which one my hand functions as. But nevertheless, my opponent did think for quite a while after I bet, and then he tosses his cards in and puts in the fold. If I check this river, my opponent checks and gets to see a showdown with his ace-x combinations. If I bet, I might get called by worse or get a middling pocket pair type hand to fold. Nevertheless, we do scoop a nice pot. In this hand, there's a limp in the hijack, and then I'm next to act in the cutoff and look down at pocket kings. I raised to $20. The big blind and the original limper call, so we're going 3 ways to a flop of 6, 7, 8 with 2 spades. The big blind checks, and then my opponent to my right makes a bet of $20. If it had been checked to me, my exact hand would have checked through, as there are a lot of bad turn cards we don't want to see. We don't want to see a spade, a 9, or a 5, because then our pocket kings are downgraded significantly in value. So we don't want to put a ton of money in on this type of board texture. So I'm gonna flat and see what develops. The big blind also calls, so we're headed 3 ways to a turn card, which is a 6 of hearts, and this is actually a pretty great card because now we beat 8-7 for 2 pair, but we're still losing to any 6x combination, 9-10, or any full house, of course. The big blind checks, and now the limper decides to continue betting. He bets $40. At this point, I don't really see a point in raising. We want to keep all worse hands in, and again, this board is not great, so I decide to call, and the big blind calls as well, so now we're going 3 ways to a river card, which is the jack of hearts. The big blind checks, the player to my right checks, and now it's on me. I feel a bit lost in the hand, not sure if I should be value betting or checking, although I think I should be value betting here, but I decided to check back and hope our hand is good against our 2 opponents. Fortunately for us, the big blind had pocket 9s, and the player to my right had ace 5 suited, so he flopped the bottom end of a straight draw and was trying to get to a cheap river card. Maybe I should have raised the turn and bet the river. I think I lost out on some value in this hand, but nevertheless, we'll pick up the money. So after those hands, I'd played about 4 hours and it was time to head home. It wasn't the most eventful session, but I hope that you guys learned a few things, as I definitely did. We were in the game for $2,000, cashed out with $2,645 for a very nice profit of $645.
If you guys enjoyed the vlog, would you do me a huge favor and go all in and like, comment, and subscribe? It would mean the world to me. We're just getting started and it's only up from here. I'll see you guys on the next vlog.